Today's video, I'm going to talk about the 5 disadvantages of a house church. But before I get into that, I wanted to show you some clips of what we did this past Sunday in our house church. You check it out.
Good morning. It is Sunday morning, and we're having church at our house today. So we're getting ready. We're eating some breakfast. Right, Malia? Eating some breakfast. I got to get the lunch ready and prepared. And we're going to clean up the house a little bit for people to come over. And we're going to get ready for church. Right, Anna?
Okay, last week I mentioned the 5 advantages of meeting in a house church. And those are really good advantages, but over the years I've really become more self-aware to understand that the house church model isn't the perfect model for everybody. It's different, it's unique, and we'll talk about that in the upcoming videos. But in this video, I wanted to list the disadvantages of meeting in a house church, but spin it in a way where it's positive on the outlook of looking at traditional churches. Now, when I use the term institutional church or traditional church, I'm really talking about 99% of churches that really operate, like they have a building, they have normal gatherings, a pastor who preaches a sermon, or they have elements in that way that is just 99% of churches operate that way, as opposed to a house church. So that's just the term I'm using, traditional church versus house church, just to distinguish those two. So let me talk about the 5 advantages of a traditional church that house churches really just can't offer or really can't do effectively. The first advantage of a traditional church is that traditional churches are a beacon of light to their community. What I mean is that I remember when I was a traditional church pastor, a lot of times throughout the week when I'm at work doing little things here and there, is that we would get people coming in our doors, knocking on them, opening, say, hey, are you a pastor? I need prayer for this or that. And we don't even know who these people are. And many times on a Sunday morning, they would come in, hey, I'm struggling right now. I need prayer. I just came in because I know you offer services. And so people would come in from the community who are hurting and in need. And traditional churches are a great opportunity because they have a physical building. They have signs that say, come in, all are welcome, things like that. And they are like a beacon of light, like a lighthouse shining, say, we are here to help. We offer the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so they're a great advantage to those who are hurting. Whereas house church, you're just driving in the neighborhood and you don't know that a particular house has a gathering in it. They don't advertise it as that, and that's a disadvantage. Whereas a traditional church is a huge advantage as a beacon of light to their community. The second advantage to a traditional church is being seeker sensitive. If there's someone who is interested in learning about Jesus, maybe they haven't been baptized, they haven't made a full commitment to Jesus, but they're interested, they want to check out a church and the community, traditional churches really are, I think, more seeker sensitive than house churches because of their environment. They could sit in the back, they don't have to engage too much, they could just sit back and listen, and that may be a really good advantage to hearing about the gospel for the first time, and they could really have an opportunity to reach those who are seeking Jesus. Whereas in a house church, once you come into a house church, It's very vulnerable. There's a small group of people. You're meeting in dining rooms and living rooms, and it may not be as conducive to someone who's a seeker sensitive. So yeah, might be a disadvantage to house churches, but an advantage to traditional churches. The third advantage of a traditional church is a high church environment. Now, there's some denominations and even cultures like the Catholic or Orthodox or Anglican churches that really have a high church mentality of liturgies and traditions and rituals and practices that may not be conducive in a house church, but it's really not as effective as having a physical building where you have icons and structures, or the architecture really permeates that form of doctrine or theology. And I think meeting in a house church doesn't really help that kind of denomination or doctrine that they're trying to reach, but actually a traditional church format would be best for that kind of church. The fourth advantage to a traditional church is specific programming. Because of the resources and volunteer teams that larger, more traditional churches have, if a church wants to, do a specific program like an outreach ministry or a VBS in the summer or a recovery ministry or maybe even a Sunday school, traditional churches can really thrive in that ministry because they have a physical building and also the resources that are attached to that. It's a really big advantage for specific programs that a church wants to use to impact their community. Whereas in a house church, because of the lack of resources on a bulk level, on a whole, it's kind of hard for a house church to operate that on a scalable level. And the fifth, and not necessarily final advantage, but just one advantage that's compared to house churches, is that benevolence infrastructure. Buildings are actually a huge advantage to the infrastructure of maybe a specific ministry that churches want to operate under, like providing houses to the homeless or feeding the hungry in masses, maybe even providing professional counseling to the emotionally wounded, and there's so much more. So that church's finances and resources can really go towards helping those who are down and out and helpless to find their way because of the resources that's being used in mass. Last week I did talk about how finances are actually an advantage to house church because of how the ratios are spent. So I do not agree with how most traditional churches spend their money, but I do appreciate how many traditional churches use that money to really do specific programs and have an infrastructure to help people right away and in masses, whereas a house church can really just do like one or two people to help people right away and not really help people in masses just because of the infrastructure of the house church. So all this to say, there are pros and cons actually to every type of church model, whether it's high church or low church, evangelical, charismatic, Pentecostal, Baptist, whatever, house church, incarnational, whatever it is, we have to understand as followers of Christ and people who attend church and want to be plugged into a community, there is no perfect church. And because there is no perfect church, I believe that there is no perfect church model. I'm not here to say everyone should start a house church and we should do away with institutional churches. That's not what I'm saying. That's not conducive to the body of Christ as a whole. So I believe that we just need to understand the pros and cons. And really, again, the purpose of this channel is for people to understand the pros and cons of a house church and maybe even make house church a viable option for those who are searching. But it's not wise to go into looking for a house church and not realizing that, oh, this isn't perfect. I'm looking for a perfect church. It's like you're going to be looking forever. You cannot find a perfect church. But we are the bride of Christ, and He calls us to be a loving community that not only loves each other in the church, but shares our love out towards the community. And if you're plugged into a church, you got to make sure you're doing that, causing unity within the church and not division, and reaching out with our love to the local community. If you're doing those things, I think you're doing church the right way. I hope this video helps you love church and love Jesus more and more. God bless you guys.